In Chapter 1, Uthas of the Benothi Giants is summoned by Nemain, Queen of the Benothi, after a mysterious event surrounding the cauldron. He is informed that the Dreamer is awakening. Uthas navigates the stronghold of Murius, accompanied by his shieldman Salach, to meet Nemain. Once there, Uthas reports that enemies are at war among themselves, but Nemain refuses to strike south due to the Benothi's weakened state. Instead, she tasks Uthas with leading a small company south to gather information on Domhain and Araman's plans while safeguarding the cauldron. A woman in the chamber, Ethlin, warns of the Kadosham's approach, sensing the cauldron's power. In Chapter 2, Cywin wakes to the aftermath of a devastating battle at Dun-Careg. She is surrounded by the dead, including her father Thanon, whose body she mourns deeply. As she searches for her family, she encounters Rafe, who reveals her brother. Ban is alive, but warns her of the harsh new reality. Cywin grows angry with Rafe's cruel taunts, but after a physical confrontation, she leaves the feast hall with Budai, her hound. She returns home to find it empty, overwhelmed by grief and the haunting thought that her family is gone. In Chapter 3, Varadas and his men camp near Haldus after a devastating battle. Romar's forces are nearly wiped out, with only a few survivors, including Jael. Varadas learns from Kalidas that King Braster will survive his injury but may never fight again. The group plans to find Nathair, who is now in Ardan at Dun-Careg. Varadas is suspicious of Jael's survival, while Romar's warband was destroyed. Kalidas reassures him, emphasizing loyalty to Nathair. The chapter ends with Varadas contemplating Romar's death, relieved to hear from Makar that a giant, not Kalidas, killed him. In Chapter 4, Maquin regains consciousness in a dark tunnel, remembering the betrayal and death of his comrades, including Castel. After mourning Castel's death, Maquin vows revenge on Jael, who killed him. Orgel, the Gadre captain, persuades Maquin to help get word of Jael's treachery to Isiltir before seeking vengeance. Together with Tahir, they search for an exit, finding a tunnel leading to the surface. As they approach the exit, Tahir is attacked by a monstrous creature. Orgel kills it, and they continue their escape. Once outside, Makeen reflects on his oath to kill Jael and leads the group into the forest. In Chapter 5, Corban and the group escape the fall of Dun-Careg, seeking shelter and food. They find a cove near Cambren and make camp, with Halion discussing their plans to take Adana to Domhain for safety. Tensions rise as Marok questions the plan, wanting to fight instead of retreating. Meanwhile, Corban's mother and Gar reveal disturbing truths about Corban's role in the looming God War. They urge him to go to Drasil for safety, but Corban struggles with abandoning their group, especially Adana, and breaking his oath. He rejects the idea, clinging to his loyalty and grief. In Chapter 6, Orgel leads Maquin to King Braster, revealing news of betrayal and the dangerous situation with Jael and Kalidas. Orgel explains his connection to a secret brotherhood and the coming God War. They reach Braster, who is recovering from an injury, and inform him of Romar's murder and Jael's involvement. As tensions rise, Braster is assassinated by Lothar, who sides with Nathair's cause. Orgel and Makin fight their way out, narrowly escaping with their lives. They flee into the night, joined by Tahir, who guides them through the forest towards safety. In Chapter 7, Lycos wakes on his ship near Geraldin, reflecting on his role in building Nathair's fleet. After a brief inspection of the shipyard, he heads to meet Fidele, navigating tense politics over supply issues and the Vindhalen's traditions, like the fighting pits. Fidele demands the pits be closed in Tenebril, and although Lycos agrees, he plans to keep them discreet. Later, Lycos confronts Jace, a recruit, after suspecting disloyalty. When Jace admits his family was killed by Lycos' forces, Lycos orders his execution, deepening his inner turmoil and fear of his own actions. In Chapter 8, Evnis reflects on the aftermath of Dun-Careg's fall and the loss of his wife Fane. He searches for his son Von, who disappeared during the chaos. Evnis recalls his confrontation with Brennan, which ended in Brennan's death by Evnis' hand. As he contemplates his next steps, Evnis meets with Nathair, the king of Tenebril. Nathair seeks Evnis' loyalty and offers help finding Von, who is rumored to be with Adana. Evnis agrees, though he harbors concerns. The conversation shifts to the powerful cauldron Evnis knows of, and the complexities of alliances and enemies in their world unfold. In Chapter 9, Corban struggles with the emotional weight of recent events, particularly the conversation with his Mam and Gar that led to conflict. He begrudgingly follows Gar for sword training, which helps him clear his mind. Meanwhile, Halion questions Gar about his past, particularly his involvement with a man named Sumer, but Gar remains tight-lipped. As the group sails further from Duncareg, Corban reflects on his guilt and anger, grappling with his mam's warning about being hunted by Asroth. The group lands near a village and quickly realizes they are near a warband. They retreat into the woods, preparing for possible confrontation. In Chapter 10, Tukul, a seasoned warrior, struggles with the physical toll of sword practice as he and his band of fighters maintain a precarious existence in the ancient, hidden city of Drasil. After 14 years of making the city defendable, the group receives a